Hello, welcome back to the garden. Earlier this year in May, I decided to plant my main crop potatoes in trenches down at the allotment. Fast forward 20 weeks later, they've just been harvested and I can't wait to share the results with you. Before I share the results though, I will take you back to May and show you how and why I decided to grow my potatoes in trenches this year. So, if you're familiar with my channel, you will know that I pretty much will choose no dig over digging any day. It's definitely easier than back-breaking digging. You don't need to worry about weeds so much and it's less damaging to the soil structure. So in my opinion, digging is a win-win. But I'm going to tell you now the reasons that I've decided to dig trenches for the main crops this year. In the very first year that I took my allotment on, I was so excited to just have an allotment again, and it had been a few years since I'd had a garden that I could actually grow vegetables in. When I took on the plot, it was the end of summer, beginning of autumn, so I really focused on getting the overwinter onions and my garlic in, and it was so fun, but I didn't really need to worry about potatoes. But when I came round to growing the potatoes and thinking about that, I really just worked with what I'd done for years and years, and I'm not sure at this stage whether I'd actually ever heard of no dig at all, but I literally had so much fun. I dug loads of trenches and grew the potatoes in those trenches that first year, and I think I left my main crops in for ages and they got huge when I was harvesting them, but it was a lot of back-breaking digging. I made sure I did really good straight lines and really enjoyed watching them grow. And then when it came to harvest time, I was so pleased with the amount of potatoes that I was harvesting and how big they were. But I can remember at the time I kept stabbing them with the fork, so it was so annoying, but that crop of potatoes kept us going for absolutely ages. And in that second season, by that time, I had actually found out what no dig was, and I was really keen to grow the potatoes no dig if I could. I'd also got really interested in using grass clippings as mulching, so I thought that was the best idea. So I grew the potatoes in really shallow holes. I think it was around about a trowel deep, and then I just spent the whole summer putting loads of grass clippings all over them. And then when it came to the harvest time, I had the most terrible harvest of potatoes I've ever had. It'd been a really wet summer as well, so that probably didn't help. But when it came to actually harvesting the main crop potatoes, they were covered in holes from slugs, snails. Some of them were completely hollow, and that year I think I probably only had about 2 kilograms of potatoes that I could actually eat, and I was so disappointed. So the year after that, I thought I'm going to do no dig potatoes and use buckets. So I went out and bought loads of 30-litre buckets, and I thought this is the way to go. With a main crop potato, when you put the potato in the soil, it will then grow the potatoes off the stem throughout that bucket. So I thought this is perfect. I can put them in there, just water them, don't worry about them, and I'm going to have some amazing videos where I'm harvesting like thousands of potatoes, and I'm just going to be a potato by the end of the winter because I'm going to just be eating them every day. So I went out and bought loads of peat-free compost, and if you are familiar with my channel, you'll know that I try and do things on the cheap where possible, and I'd already spent about £3 each on these buckets. So I went out and got the cheapest peat-free compost that I could use, filled up the buckets, and kept watering them throughout the summer, and it came to harvest time. Unfortunately, when I harvested these potatoes, it was the most rubbish potato harvest, again, I'd pretty much ever had. And I'm not sure, in comparison with the no dig and losing loads of them to slugs, whether I actually had about the same amount of weight of usable potatoes. And I think the main reason for this was just the compost that I'd used. It was cheap, peat-free, not very nutritious, and I probably didn't water them as much as I could have done. And now I find myself at the very beginning of the year 4 growing season, and with the last 3 years experience in mind, I have decided to grow my potatoes this year in trenches. Now, I would probably, if I had the choice and infinite budget, I would choose to grow them back in potatoes if I could, but I don't want to spend another kind of big amount of money this year on compost and not really know what I'm dealing with until it gets to the harvest. So I've decided to get my potatoes dug in a trench down at this bottom end of my allotment. So I'm not going to lie, it's actually quite hard work digging the trenches and then harvesting the potatoes once they're in the ground. I knew that I had put them in about a spade deep and that all of the potatoes would be above that kind of depth. But when you're digging a fork into the ground, you know, you don't really know how far the potatoes have grown out and you always end up stabbing some. So there were a few casualties when I was harvesting them, and I'm pretty sure I left quite a few in the ground. But that aside, I'm going to take them out now and we can have a look at the harvest. I'm going to be leaving them in the greenhouse for a couple of days just to harden off and dry out, and then they'll be taken in for storage. So the first thing I will say though is that the potatoes on the whole were pretty big, and bigger than any of the potatoes that I've ever grown before. I do realise, as I've just said, that the potatoes were some of the biggest ones I've ever grown. There are still loads of really small ones in here too. Another thing as well is I have had some that do have damage. This one in particular, you know, growing in the ground, you are going to be susceptible for kind of insects, slugs and things under the ground. However, in comparison to when I did grow the no dig ones, these are much better, and I just can't believe, you know, some of the size of the potatoes I've got in here. These are Sarpo Mira. They're renowned for getting quite big, and that is one of the reasons that I like to grow them. Another reason that I grow the Sarpo Mira is that they are blight resistant. And here in South Wales, in the UK, we do have some really kind of wet weather. We're in a valley and we've got a little microclimate that quite often in the summer months we get so much rain, kind of along with humidity, you end up getting blight. So they're a firm favourite from me. And this is the harvest, and I am pretty pleased with these potatoes. I haven't weighed the harvest, and I don't think I am going to weigh it, but there's probably quite a few of you watching this that think the yield is pretty low considering they were grown in 2 trenches, and I probably agree with you there, but I don't think it's down to kind of the potatoes not performing well because of the potatoes grown in the trenches. I think it was more kind of the environment they were grown in. We had a bit of a funny season, and because they were grown at the allotment and I've not tended it very much this year, they were allowed to get pretty overgrown with weeds, as you've seen from when I was harvesting them, but also I think I only watered them a couple of times. When it comes to things like watering and fertilizers and stuff like that, I don't always want to throw loads of resources at, you know, my crops because I'm busy, and also, you know, I don't want to waste water just in the hope to get slightly bigger potatoes. And I've still managed to grow a good crop considering I didn't put much work into them. On reflection, I am actually really pleased with the harvest that I've had from growing the potatoes in trenches. When you compare it with the no-dig potatoes mulched with the grass clippings and growing them in buckets, this has actually probably been much easier and a low maintenance way of growing them. I'm not sure how I'm going to be growing them next year, whether I'm going to do a mixture of all three, but one thing is my growing area is going to be different, so it'd be really interesting to see how that happens next year. If you're interested in seeing the full video of where I actually planted these potatoes in trenches, I will leave that above in the cards now, down below in the description, and all of the footage that I shared from growing the potatoes in the previous years, I'll also put those videos down below in the description as well if you're interested in watching those. Thank you so much for watching. If this is one of the first time you're watching my videos, I really hope you've enjoyed it. Please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of all of my latest videos. As ever, YouTube have some videos up now on the screen that they think you'll like, so please go ahead and watch those, and I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Bye!